Good morning, everybody. My name is John Mara, and welcome to Get the Hell Out. This is our Genesis 6 conversation here today.
Yeah, continued
Genesis 6 conversation. I've got Eric Olson with me here today. Eric, you want to take us through a little bit about, this is something we like to start off with, what do we believe, just as a foundational effort to make sure everybody understands what are our core beliefs.
Absolutely. Paul says if you don't believe, if the foolishness of believing Jesus is crucified, well, we're that. We believe that Jesus was God, that he came in the flesh. He dwelt among us. He lived a sinless life. He was born of a Virgin Mary. He had a family. He interacted. He was fun. It was just all these cool things. And yet he had a purpose. His purpose was to go and to thwart Satan, thwart the opposition. And he died. And I'm sure the demonic realm got excited when he died, and Jesus went and preached to them, and he was resurrected and ascended to God the Father. And so that's our hope in the gospel.
That it is. And he doesn't mind a fire truck driving by.
No, he doesn't mind it. No. It goes with the theme.
It does.
Yeah, we got to get that fire out.
It does.
So, yeah. So, man, well, we have spent a lot of time even here before talking about what we're going to talk about today, because last week we just opened up what for many can be like a can of worms. If you look at the first 4 to 6 verses of Genesis 6, it becomes a scary project. And I know that I wasn't taught anything about it in my years of whatever. John, I think you already said you've never gone there, right?
Never gone there, and maybe even went a little bit too far last week. So we're gonna keep it all good this week.
Yeah, we're going to try to. So one of the things I'm going to do is I want to step back and give what I think will, over time, I told you in the past that I want you to consider the ground and the importance of the ground. And so today I want to talk to you about the importance of the gene pool, or said another way, the bloodline. And it's going to be a constant theme through the Old Testament for sure, in understanding the bloodline. So the way I want you to think about it is to consider that in Genesis 6, verse, let's see, let me make sure I get this right, verse, 9, talking about Noah and the flood. Now, we're not going to jump too far into this because it's going to be a whole nother couple conversations. But it says, these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God, and Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Who else do we know who walked with God? Anybody want to chime in? Who else walked?
Jesus.
Jesus walked with God, yeah.
Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve. Is someone else? Laura, Christopher? Abel, yeah. Yep. So
physically walked with God.
Yep. I mean, you can hear that there was walking footsteps in the garden. So God presents himself in a physical form. So last week we talked about how the Elohim looked down on the daughters of man, and they came down and they had interactions with them. And, the old knew them in the Bible as sort of the slick way to get away from talking about sexuality. But they came down, and so they can put in bodily form. Lot, when he met the 2 angels in Sodom and Gomorrah, the same thing happened. There are these bodily forms. But there's a bloodline. So Noah was a righteous man. It doesn't mean he was perfect, but he was a good man. And later in Hebrews, he talks about by faith Noah. So we know that there was a connection, that he walked with God, and it was important. But in this story, we see that the angels came down, the Elohim came down, they procreated with the daughters of men. The outcome was Nephilim, giants, and mighty warriors were output from it. And God immediately goes into verse 5. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth. So this just didn't, you could have seen that with Cain. Okay, Cain killed Abel.
Yep.
Adam and Eve did their thing. Wickedness was rampant. Something is different here. And it immediately follows the first 4 verses. Anyone have any thoughts on this before we just continue to go?
I'm good. I mean, only thing I would, comment is that, many of the different verses talk about my spirit will not contend with. I'm like trying to, what does contend with? What does that mean? Well, that is when the Lord is saying, hey, my spirit's not going to remain in humans forever. They are mortal, and their days are going to be numbered to 120 years versus, many different folks. Noah's over 600 years old, many 400 years old, so different. We're seeing a schism. We're seeing a very big change taking place right here.
Well, I can't remember if I talked about it after, or maybe it was last week or before, but the 120 years, Abraham lived more than 120 years. So that 120 years is believed to be where God made the call that there's going to be 120 years left before the flood comes. So in saying that, that's where he was pointing to. But what's more important is the bloodline. So you have the Nephilim, you have chaos out of order in the garden, you have chaos, or you have disorder. So all these things are coming into place, and then immediately God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth because of the interaction with the Elohim and the product of the Nephilim. And God held 8 people and put them in the ark. And again, we're not going to go there this week, but he saved them. So there are some questions. Today we're going to go into some of the what ifs, or the questions you probably have, and the questions that are sort of blowing our mind up. And Christopher thought of a great verse at the end of the Gospels. Well, remember you were talking about the things that are written of Jesus?
And of course I don't have an address. But it's the scripture that basically says, if we were going to try and write down everything that Jesus did in his life, that there's not enough pages and there's not enough space on the planet. It seems like that's what's happening here, is the more we dig into the word, the more it means and the bigger it gets. And it's like this super compact thing that's just expanding out exponentially, and there won't be enough pages to fit all the knowledge that we glean out of it.
And the more questions that we then have,
right,
to try to understand and research. I mean, we're just like you, trying to do the best that we can to try to understand what is the Bible telling us through research and trying to learn that, and then trying to bring that to you. But if you have thoughts or ideas that are different than ours, we definitely want to hear them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to go on a limb and just say that for me, I'm speaking for me, I believe that understanding this, if you bear with us, and I'm talking not just a week or two, I'm talking over a course of a serious amount of time. If you bear with us, that your understanding of the Old Testament and New Testament will be richer and deeper, and you will continue mining on a vein, and that vein will never end. To Christopher's point, it just won't end. And I know my wife, I think, has gone down the same journey with this. I have just been blown away. And more questions. We talked before we started recording of the hours spent studying, because the questions come up. And that's really my goal. My personal goal for you all out there is not that you have something to argue about, but my goal is that you have something to study deeper in. Laura?
And I would say I have talked to several, mostly women, that have said that they just don't read the Old Testament because it doesn't make any sense to them. And when you realize that the Old Testament is just a foreshadowing, a storyline for Jesus, it starts to make sense when you see certain things repeated over and over and over again. The Bible initially was meant to be heard and not read necessarily, and so it was repeated over and over. So there were key storylines and symbolism throughout that tells the same story. And so it's exciting to study the Old Testament in that light, and then you read the New Testament and it's like things you didn't see before all of a sudden take on a whole new enlightenment.
Absolutely.
I had a meeting in a church group on a cruise. So, they have church on cruises, and got into a conversation with a wonderful woman that was there. And And she didn't really believe. She was a believer in Jesus, but she didn't really believe in the Old Testament. She just believed that Jesus, that God was a loving and wonderful and great being. And I asked her, have you read the Old Testament? No. Since Jesus came, that no longer really applies. And then I asked her, I said, what do you think that Jesus celebrated as the Word of God every day of his life?
Yeah.
And she looked at me, oh, the Old Testament. That is the Word of God.
Yeah.
So I'm with you totally. It is hard. It is confusing. I remember that's where I started reading, and man, I should have started reading in the New Testament, right? Because that was going to be a whole lot more familiar with me because I was just totally confused. But, projects like this just continue to help us learn more and more, and it is so foundational in what we have here.
No.
I was going to say, I heard a teacher once say, the Old Testament is the New Testament concealed, and the New Testament is the Old Testament revealed.
Yeah.
Just exactly what Laura said, exactly what you said, John, that Jesus came and revealed such a depth to the Old Testament. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have a little fun with this since we sort of gone there. I want to go to the New Testament, and I'm going to read from Jude.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And so a little preface, Jude was always a cool thing. It was talking about some stuff, and you sort of gloss over it and get some things, and you hear about people in the church. And but listen, if you've been listening along, and I hope you go in order because it will help you. Let's look at Jude, and I'm at Jude chapter 1. Jude, a servant of Jesus Christ and brother of James, to those who are called, beloved in God the Father, and kept for Jesus Christ, may mercy and peace and love be multiplied to you. Beloved, although I was very eager to write to you about our common salvation, I found it necessary to write appealing to you to contend for the faith that was once delivered to all the saints. For certain people have crept in unnoticed who long ago, so you got to really just start thinking about this, who long ago were designated for this condemnation, ungodly people who perverted the grace of our God into sensuality and deny our only Master and Lord Jesus Christ. So before I just look at that and be like,
Okay, skip over that.
Yeah, well, no, it's these people. I didn't even skip over it. I was just it's just talking about, ungodly people in the church.
Right, just a little perversion.
A little perversion here and there, and good Lord, that happens. That happens everywhere. But when it says they crept in who long ago
where did they come from?
Yeah, long ago. And they perverted the grace of God into sensuality. That's like, So it should be that whole thing, things that make you go, in this. Now, listen what it continues to say, because this is going to floor you, I think, because we talked about the Old Testament, and if Jesus, maybe it's called the scarlet thread of redemption from Genesis 3:15, that you see Jesus a lot of the way through the scripture. Here, listen what it says. Now I want to remind you, Jude speaking, although you once fully knew it, that Jesus, you got it up here on the screen, Christopher? Mm-hmm. That Jesus, who saved a people out of the land of Egypt. Do you hear that? Jesus saved the people out of the land of Egypt and afterwards destroyed those who did not believe. This doesn't say God. This doesn't say, this says Jesus.
In the times of the Old Testament.
Yes. Yep. And this is written after Jesus had already died and resurrected. This is like one of the later pieces here. So Jesus was in the Old Testament. So you can't divorce Jesus from the Old Testament, no matter how hard you try. There's a well-known pastor, not going to say his name, who said we need to get away from the Old Testament. And it makes me shriek. And I'm like, nope. I like that, that whole revealed, concealed and revealed. So he goes on. And the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which likewise indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desires. Remember, long ago, think about Genesis 6, 1 through 4, pursued unnatural desires, wasn't meant to be. The Elohim were not supposed to come down. They were not supposed to have relationship. Serve as an example by undergoing a punishment of eternal fire. That's in Jude, right before Revelations, very short, 1-chapter book. What do y'all think?
I think that just blows you away when you really think about it. So first off, we've got Jesus clearly in the Old Testament time frame, and then you've got, I'm not sure how deep we want to get into this, but you've got the potential of the Nephilim being involved in the fallen Elohim through teaching the Nephilim about all different types of evil things. I don't want to call specifically out yet, but you've got all kinds of things here that are now represented in humanity, represented in stories around Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, you've got...
Yeah, this is a big event.
This is big.
Yeah.
And to tag into what you were saying, many scholars believe, and they believe strongly, that when you start thinking about Babylon, when you start thinking about the Mesopotamian culture, when you start looking at the evil that we know, so whatever you think of diviners, divination, satanic rituals, demonic spirits, all these things were brought down. The knowledge was brought down from the Elohim. Now, I'm going to go a little sci-fi on you, and I'll probably hear about this one. But have you given thought that possibly when we looked at Egypt and the pyramids, if you were to say some adjectives about what people, when you watch documentaries, I love the History Channel stuff and watching that, what do you hear about how phenomenal that building was? What are some of the things you heard about it? Anybody got some ideas?
Oh, the science around all the engineering that took place. Mm-hmm. Just people said, it just didn't exist at that point in time. Yep. So how did they do that?
Yep.
Yeah, there's even, I've heard some people say, like, we can barely do some of the stuff that they did back then. Now we've just figured out how to do it, and we're so much more advanced than they ever were.
Right.
Or were we?
Right.
Yeah. So that's the question. Like, if you...
And you brought up the sci-fi, so it could have been aliens. I'm just joking.
Yeah, well, it depends on how you define aliens.
It could be, right?
So here's a proposition. And again, I'm not stating a fact. I'm stating an idea. If the Elohim came down and they had godly knowledge, they had knowledge of the Creator, they understood creation in a way that we don't understand it, they knew far more than we know right now. They came and they had those relationships, and out of it, giants, strong, valiant, mighty men came out of it. Not only that, but they had an intellect, a knowledge that most people, nobody back then had. I would just say that.
Right.
So they didn't have that. And then you have Great Babylon, and we're fast forwarding a little bit, being built up after Babel. And you have divination, you have sorcerers, you have astronomers, what's it called? Like
astrologers.
Astrologers, thank you.
Yep.
You have all these things that if I want to be honest with you, I've always I've always gone, man, there's more to those false gods or those false things than just someone's getting lucky on a board or rolling some dice. Something is deeper there.
Right.
And understanding this gives us some plausible reasoning that there was things shared to the Egyptians, to the Babylonians, to these empires that created some things that we can't explain to this day.
Can I
Yeah,
throw something
absolutely.
out there to you? It's actually in Job 38:31, where he's getting yelled at by God a little bit. And it says, "Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades or loosen the belts of Orion?" Now, most astronomers don't know this. There are 2 constellations in the night sky that are actually gravitationally linked. And those constellations are the Pleiades and Orion. No other constellations. All the rest of the constellations are gazillions of
Far
light
enough
years
away,
apart.
no gravitational
There's no gravity,
impact.
none of that. It's just
Wow.
how they appear to us. But those 2 are. And it's brought up in Job that those 2
Are linked.
Like, that's some knowledge that there's no way for Job to have.
No way.
They
No.
don't know about gravity and all of that interstellar. No.
So I was wondering when you started this out if you were going to go there, and you,
Yeah, you
and
just-
you did. You drove a truck right through it. So I'm going to keep on going.
Okay.
So I'm going to take us back again to verse 4. The Nephilim were on earth in those days, and also afterward. When the Son of Gods went to the daughters of humans and had children by them, they were heroes of old, men of renown. So you've got 2 things in that one sentence, that Nephilim were there afterwards, and there's many different scholarly interpretations as to
Yep.
why that is. Maybe they didn't die, maybe they became demonic spirit. I mean, many different reasons there, but it's really interesting. Christopher helped me out with just a light bulb moment earlier today when we were talking about this. Is that those Nephilim, really were revered, and they were heroes, and they were men of renown. Yeah, I think you brought up the concept of even Hercules a little earlier. I'm like, Hercules. Oh, boof. Okay. So that's how they were perceived. They had a knowledge that was far beyond what common humans did at that point in time. Not only a strength, but a knowledge.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of that knowledge wasn't used for good.
No, it wasn't. And like you said, we are going down this wormhole.
Right. Yeah. Don't take that as doctrine.
No.
It's just
No,
an
no.
interesting observation that could possibly be true.
Juice.
Right.
It's possible.
Right.
It's
Well,
possible.
you say that, and the guy I meet with on Mondays every week, last week came up to me and said, I'm reading this Greek book, and it got me thinking about how similar this is to this idea. Laura, you going to say something?
Yeah, so when we started studying and whatnot, I decided to do the Bible Project classroom, and it's called Heaven and Earth. And it was very, very deep, and I didn't retain but maybe 1% of it. But one of the things I found interesting is when Tim Mackey was talking about creation and heaven and earth, the Babylonians and the Egyptians had very similar thoughts of how creation happened. It was very,
Right.
very, very similar to God, our God's creation, but twisted.
Yeah.
And so
To support their viewpoints.
exactly.
Right.
Yes.
So it is all history crafted by man to support, except the Bible and everything that we have about Jesus.
Yeah, and you think about it, and I'm sure y'all have heard this saying before. It's easy to refute somebody that's way off base. Super easy. It's really hard when there's a closeness and it just strays into the shadows of non-truth.
Is it the best lies have a kernel of truth in them?
Yep.
Well, so much of this has a common historical reference. So it all points to, all the same major events. It's just, how you interpret what takes place in between them.
Right.
That is the change.
So it's crazy, and it's crazy in a way that gets me excited to dig deeper. As was mentioned, there's so much more into this. So we have all been digging in, and I'll just say, I'll speak for me. I came in here with just, to some degree, more awesome questions than awesome answers right away. But part of it too is that I am eager for us. I want to jump ahead to Babel because I think it'll expound all this and make it more understandable, but I'm waiting because I'm trying to be patient. It is against my nature. But if you wait it out and see, there are tons of questions. In this room of 4 people, there are tons of questions. And we are going to pursue some of these answers together. Some of the questions like the heroes of old, the founder of Babel. And Lord, I just forgot his name. The great hunter. Someone help me. I'm going to go further into Genesis. Hopefully I can find them because I am fatigued.
The one that was more evil?
He was a great hunter. He
Nimrod.
was Nimrod, yes. So funny thing. Let me have fun with this because it's a fun moment. If you've read about Nimrod, if you know anything about culture, I'm just going to ask you all before maybe I shared it with you. When you heard the term Nimrod, would you name your kid Nimrod?
No.
No, Laura, would you? No, we didn't go for that, right? No. So, and why is that? Why? What? We have a preconceived notion. It was started in the maybe late 40s, early 50s by Bugs Bunny. Nimrod was making a spoof off of Elmer Fudd.
Huh.
So Bugs Bunny was a sarcastic, crazy rabbit. He's a wascally wabbit, right?
He was.
And so he would mess with Elmer Fudd with his gun there. It was almost like a pop gun and walk up. He was a great hunter. And he called him, come on, Nimrod. So Nimrod, because of our culture and our context, we understand Nimrod as being a negative. So in the Bible, I remember reading it and reading about Nimrod and going, the guy's a Nimrod. He's Elmer Fudd. And what I didn't realize is that the context isn't our context. It is this Mesopotamian agrarian culture that Nimrod was a descendant, was a Nephilim, and he was a great hunter. And so Bugs Bunny changed our whole perspective on a biblical term. So here's a question. All that we've been taught from various things, how much have we tried to make it fit into our context as opposed to stepping out of our context and going to who it was written to? Because these concepts were not unusual for these people. Thoughts on Nimrod?
It is interesting. The Bible describes him as a mighty hunter before the Lord. I actually never thought of him. I mean, a Nephilim?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then, absolutely makes total sense, right? I love the everything that we think of. We read something, we understand something. It's all coming out of what I call our record collection, our frame of reference, our frame of understanding. But our frame of understanding really had very little to do with what was taking place back then. So, whether it's going back to the actual Hebrew words of the Bible or even understanding what was taking place at that point in time is so important and so critical to truly understanding what the Word is trying to tell you.
Yeah. No, it's good stuff. You're right. And we have to keep that in mind.
So,
go ahead, Christopher.
I've got something, I don't know what to call it. I got something different. And now for something completely different.
All right.
The translation for that particular verse, 10:9, is the one that you guys are talking about, Genesis 10:9. And Eric, would you mind reading what your translation says?
Yep. Got to pull my glasses off here. Verse 9.
Yeah.
He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Keep going.
No, that was it.
Okay.
So interestingly, the translation is in error. This is one of those places that if you dig into the Septuagint, you'll find out that it actually should have been translated, he was a mighty tyrant in the face of the Lord. He was hunting men's souls.
All right, I'm pulling it up here.
Huh.
Let's see. Now you throw me a curveball.
Exactly.
Right. No kidding.
Exactly. You said you wanted to dig. Well, let's start digging.
While you're looking that up, and keep on trucking, I'm going to throw another interesting thought process here. In that depending on which different scholars you talk about, I think consistently they haven't been able to identify, or he has not been attested in any historic non-biblical records or kings lists, including those of Mesopotamia itself. So historians have really failed to match Nimrod with any historical attesting human figure. Well, that makes sense because he's not.
Right. Yeah, so he wasn't, like, in some of the writings, I think the thing it's going to take too long for me to, like, play with this, but the thing I can attest to is that he was not a great person.
No.
And
Well, he created Babel.
right. Yeah, he wasn't a great person. So translations, and let me add to what Christopher said, because he's right. A translation is just that. It's a translation. It is not perfect. That is why we have to dig into the word. So when on the first week that I did the podcast with Psalm 82, it was like the Elohim, God, the Elohim, was with the Elohim. And you just wouldn't get that. And you translate in your head, you think about, well, that just means other gods. Well, maybe it's just idols that I have in my life, things that I look after. But no, it's so much richer and deeper than that. So Nimrod, is not a good guy. He's not. And you have to delve into that. So many people that we think maybe are good, maybe they're not as good as you think they are over time with that.
Right. He's actually one of the first people that, I'm doing air quotes that no one can see, died and raised again in 3 days. So throw that one out there for you.
Now, where are you getting that from?
It's Babylonian, like that's where their religion came from, was Nimrod died and his mother, Semiramis,
That's pretty good.
raised him from the dead in 3 days.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep. So we're just blowing things up here today, and we intentionally sort of going to do that today because we have a lot of work to do. And we're looking forward to that work. John?
I was just, I'm like, was my jaw on the table when you were talking about that? I'm like, what? But then it just brings back in my mind, I think you actually brought this comment up, that the Nephilim, the spiritual beings with greater knowledge of things that humans didn't have, really brought down many horrific things, one of them being sorcery.
Right.
And that's a great historical reference. True. Not even going to go there. But I mean.
But we will go there because
reference.
Right, how many have read the story about Saul and the witch of Endor? And be like, well, that's just he just went to somebody who had a little 5 and dime store on the side and threw up a horoscope thing, as we would see in our context. He actually went to somebody and saw something
and got yelled at for it.
Oh yeah, it was bad juju. It was not a good thing.
Yeah, right.
So we want you to see that God's commands, God's grace for us, God's mercy, he wants us to live out of disorder into that order. He wants us to remove chaos and bring peace, shalom, into our homes. So this goes into that, goes back to the word hell, get the hell out. We want to follow after God's standards. We don't want to give in to the culture. We don't want to give in to the demonic. We don't want to give in to all these things, but we want to trust God and be found faithful so that we can give him glory. That's ultimately what we're going to do. And if we trust him, so we have this saying at church, we want to learn our mission. Well, our vision is to be a family that is pursuing the kingdom of Jesus. It's intentional. Kingdom of Jesus, and we want to be a family, so we want to be close. We want to do, as Pastor Todd said, we want to do root work together. And root work, if you ever done landscaping, and I don't do a lot of it, but he told me, he said, root work is always dirty and it's hard. So it's dirty work. So if we're going to get the hell out, we're going to understand that it's dirty work. Any more and more time that you spend with somebody, you're going to realize how dirty the roots are. But over time, as Christians, and it doesn't matter which church, as Christians, as we delve into time and we're doing dirty work together, the roots become interlocked, and that family, it becomes like a family of aspen trees that are interlocked, the roots are interlocked together, and there's strength and stability. And obviously the ultimate root is found in Christ. So we want to trust God and others. And that's hard because all of us here have been busted by other people. And we've probably busted some people too. We've hurt those relationships. So we want to learn to trust God and others. We want to die to self. So for me, dying to self is not having to be right about a theological term. It's not having to be perfect. It's not having to do all that. It's really learning to not be about me, but it's about Jesus. Does what we're talking point to Jesus? Was Jesus there when Moses, did he save the people, during those times? I want to die to self so Jesus becomes everything. And then lastly, we want to live in agape love. So no matter how much someone comes at me, that I can learn, I'm not there yet, that I can learn to just respond as Christ did.
I just got washed over. It's interesting. This is going to sound stupid probably, but I just got the immense feeling in my heart that Jesus, God, put me sitting next to you here as a blessing.
Oh man, it's been both ways, brother.
To be able to learn and to listen, and I mean, just
we're all four of us in this room. It's been a labor of love,
yep.
And love requires sacrifice, and that's a Easter egg for Kennedy if you're watching this. But dude, I feel the same way, and it's so cool as we do root work and we question each other and we question an idea and thoughts. Our trust of God grows, and then ultimately the trust of each other.
Yep, absolutely.
And that kind of trust, and now I'm preaching, that kind of trust needs to be conveyed in the churches in Easton. It needs to be conveyed in the churches in Talbot County, and keep going with it. Jerusalem, Samaria, Judea, so that when they see us and they see that we actually believe God, we're not just dealing with a Sunday school story. We actually believe God and his word, what he says. We believe there are Nephilim. We believe angels came down. It's crazy, but we believe it. Then we stand together trusting in Jesus more and more, trusting that he will take us to the promised land, as he helped Moses do, who represented the law. And no longer will Christians be looked as goofballs and angry people who are hypocrites and are backbiting and knocking each other, cutting the root down, the tree down, instead of building up. That, I believe that's our heart in this room, and hopefully that's the heart together.
I think that's the definition of man's church versus God's church.
Yeah.
And it is interesting. Many of you, I would imagine the majority of you listening out here don't know, we go to different churches.
Yep.
We are from different churches, and our goal is to bring them together, because we do all believe, at our core tenets, we all believe the same thing. So having those communications and dialogue is just so important.
Right. And remember what we believe for sure. The core doctrine is Christ and him resurrected.
We all believe.
Yep. We believe that. And we're going to have nuances, but we're not going to fight here. We're not going to fight. We're going to be, there's an old thing when I took Aikido, the hand of friendship is stronger than the hand of war. You literally have more strength in an open hand than you do in a closed one. So with that, we're going to continue next week, and we're going to delve deeper into some more of these questions. We're going to work out what ones we're going to identify and how much we want to go, because they're going to continually be revealed. So I ask that you would join us next week and share, like, subscribe, whatever you can do if it's helping you and being a blessing. And we just want you to know we're praying for you.
And comments.
Yes.
We would love if you have any questions or comments or thoughts. Again, we're continuing to learn here. So if you have ideas, you have thoughts, bring them to us. Let us research them, let us understand them, and then respond to them.
Absolutely. Have a blessed day. Take care. Hey, thanks for joining us on our podcast of Get the Hell Out. I just want to encourage you to subscribe, like, or share the podcast with other people you think it would be helpful. If you have questions, I'd ask that you would post that either on YouTube or Facebook, and we will do our best to get that question and try to answer it if it's a helpful question. And also, if there is a rebuttal that you have, maybe an argument that is legit, I'm sure I'm going to say some things that are wrong or off base, and I just want to correct that for everyone else. So again, thank you for everything, and have a great day.